Hi there, I'm Colleen DeBase. Welcome to the Story Exchange. I've got our very own Victoria Flexner here.
I'm a writer and a food historian.
And today, we see a lot of high-profile women in food. Chefs and restaurant owners, and of course, TV hosts.
Like Eva Longoria.
I'm exploring Mexico to see how the people, their lands, and their past have shaped a culinary tradition
And literal living legends like Alice Waters.
The famous Chez Panisse owner and chef was recently featured on the Legends season of Emmy-nominated series Chef's Table.
Alice Waters is the mother of the farm-to-table movement. It's her uncompromising.
These shows got me thinking about some other female legends in food, specifically American food, who we might not be as familiar with today.
And as we approach the semi-quincentennial,
which is the 250-year anniversary of America that's coming up in 2026.
This country might be very divided, but we do all love our food.
Yeah, I mean, how would we even define American food today? It's so much more than the stereotypes of hamburgers and hot dogs.
It's diverse.
It's regional.
And it's personal.
And at this moment in U.S. history, I think American food culture is really worthy of investigation. Who are the legends who helped to define it?
Or perhaps, more importantly for us here at the Story Exchange, who are some of the women, some of the lesser-known women, who helped define American food culture? To kick off this special series, we're going to head to the super steamy New York City offices at the Story Exchange
to talk about the great American food writer Mary Frances Kennedy Fisher, better known by her initials MFK Fisher.
Hi. How's it going?
It is warm. I'm like sweating in my t-shirt.
Is the radiator on?
I think it might be.
Okay. All right, so tell me what you're doing.
I am peeling a tangerine. Got these at Mr. Kiwi yesterday. Lay it out on a paper towel and then lay them on top of a radiator to cook them.
Why are you doing this sort of weird experiment?
It's a good question, Colleen. That's a good question. So when MFK Fisher was spending time in France in the 1930s, she would carefully lay out little pieces of tangerine on her hot radiator.
They look very orange and plumpy.
And then stick them on her snowy windowsill to chill.
Yeah. And she wrote a pretty famous short story about this.
Yes, she wrote, quote, "Almost every person has something secret that he likes to eat. It was then that I discovered little dried sections of tangerine. My pleasure in them is subtle and voluptuous and quite inexplicable." That's a very good tangerine.
It's very good, yeah. Did you try this one?
I've tried
Okay.
the fresh batch. Originally from California, Fisher was a prolific writer. She wrote over 30 books in her career. Books about her life, her day-to-day, the meals that punctuated them. She wrote about her life in France, her time in Europe. She wrote about love.
People ask me, why do you write about food and eating and drinking?
That is MFK Fisher herself talking from a documentary called The Art of Eating.
The easiest answer is to say that, like most other humans, I am hungry.
Her 1937 essay, Borderland, inspired our tangerine radiator experiment and kind of perfectly encapsulates her style.
Totally. She's ostensibly writing about tangerines, but there's so much more there. She describes the world going by outside the window, watching late afternoon newspapers get delivered, soldiers, quote, stomping back from the Rhine, prostitutes, quote, mincing smartly into tea rooms. But there's also this sense of loneliness and boredom, too. It's this super quiet little peek into the interior moments of someone's life.
The sections of the tangerine are gone, and I cannot tell you why they are so magical. Perhaps it is that little shell, thin as one layer of enamel on a Chinese bowl, that crackles so tinily, so ultimately under your teeth, or the rush of cold pulp just after it. or the perfume. I cannot tell. There must be someone, though, who understands what I mean. Probably everyone does because of his own secret eatings.
If you go into any bookstore today, at the front of the shop, there's usually a table with new releases, and there's sure to be some written by chefs or food media personalities.
Yeah. People want to know about the behind the scenes of restaurants. They might pick up Gabrielle Hamilton's Blood, Bones, and Butter, Marcus Samuelson's Yes Chef, or look out for Padma Lakshmi's new book, Padma's All-American.
Yeah, though not as many people are familiar with MFK Fisher's books published so long ago.
But I think once you kind of delve into her writing, people will find that her prose, her stories, they're very familiar because her writing really served as the basis for the genre that we now know as food memoir.
And I think what's amazing and notable is that it's very intimate, right? Like that's what we love about MFK Fisher is the intimacy of her voice.
That's Anne Zimmerman.
I wrote a biography of MFK Fisher that's called An Extravagant Hunger, The Passionate Years of MFK Fisher.
Needless to say, Anne is a fan of Fisher, who passed away in 1992 at the age of 83.
She's with James Beard. She's with Julia Child. She's the godmother of the American wine world and food world.
And I spoke to Anne because I don't think it's a stretch to say that the way that we write about food, the way that we think about food, the way that we talk about food, it can all be traced directly back to MFK Fisher.
I think it is true that the thing that really sets MFK Fisher apart, especially if we're bringing her into the contemporary sphere, is that she was really not a recipe writer. She was an eater. She was a sensual person. She enjoyed things. She observed things.
One of Fisher's most famous titles is How to Cook a Wolf. It was published during 1942 in the middle of World War II. The book on its face is a guide to cooking during food shortages. The wolf in the title refers to hunger or poverty knocking at the door, but it's far more than a cookbook. It's a philosophical meditation on how to live well with less.
I mean, I loved it, but it was like, what did I just read? Like, it's not a cookbook.
Right. The narrative food memoir essay. And I do think she was the person who pioneered that. I do not think of her work as being recipe focused. It is not like, oh, Easter Sunday is coming up. This is what you should do. Like that hostessing, she is not Martha Stewart. That is not her vibe. Her vibe is like be out in the world, noticing and enjoying yourself and having these unique experiences and writing about them.
And yet, MFK Fisher is actually not that well known, at least these days, outside of food circles.
I think that's true. Funnily enough, even Anne Zimmerman, her own biographer, hadn't really known much about her until she was getting her master's degree in women's studies at San Diego State. Originally, she'd planned to do her thesis on Zelda Fitzgerald.
Fisher and Fitzgerald are very close together in the library. And I had heard the name MFK Fisher from some of these people that worked in the wine industry in Oregon, but very much in like a name droppy sort of way. Like, oh, MFK Fisher, oh, MFK Fisher. And I would sort of like nod and be like, oh, sure, MFK Fisher. Yes, obviously.
So funny.
So she checked out a whole bunch of books by MFK Fisher.
I just read and cooked and read and thought and cooked. And by the end of it, I was like, this is who I want to write just this paper about.
Okay, when I think of food memoir, I think of two people from more modern times. Ruth Reichel, who was one of my favorites.
She was the former gourmet editor who wrote Tender at the Bone and, more recently, Save Me the Plums.
Yeah, so good. And I also think, of course, of the late, great Anthony Bourdain.
Always. For anyone who doesn't know, Bourdain basically blew apart the restaurant industry when he wrote Kitchen Confidential in 2000. He then had a number of different shows on TV over the years that were really unlike any other food or travel show that came before it.
I'm Anthony Bourdain. That's right. I write, I travel, I eat, and I'm hungry for more.
And yet, we're saying MFK Fisher basically did all this first.
Not just first, but about, 60 or 70 years before anyone else was doing it. I asked Anne about this.
Her writing is so unbelievably unique. And I'm curious what your thoughts on her influence on food memoir and also how it compares to work in this space today.
It's going back to this idea of like writer versus cook. I used to kind of bristle at the Anthony Bourdain comp. I've come around to it a little bit just because they both had such singular personalities, different personalities. I mean, to me, it's like a total Venn diagram thing where there is overlap and the little center is the singular voice and the ability to like write very embodied, close to the bone narrative that's voicey.
Whereas Bourdain's work is super macho.
Yeah, macho, exactly.
MFK Fisher's work has a different style.
It's not like her vibe is like feminine, whatever that means. But the through line for me is this like doing the work, going to the place that might not seem like the most obvious place. It's not the place with the best light, doesn't have like the floral Instagram background so that you can take a picture of your smoothie or whatever. And then talking to the people that were there, hearing the story, and then eating the food and talking about the food and making a connection between all of those things. I mean, that to me is quintessential MFK Fisher. And I think there are a lot of people who are doing it. And the fact that there's not one heir to her legacy just proves like how great she truly is.
When we come back, we'll dive into more of MFK Fisher's backstory.
A fascinating and adventurous life filled with tales of travel, heartbreak, and living unapologetically.
We'll be right back.
The Story Exchange is an award-winning nonprofit media platform that elevates women's voices and achievements. Check out our site to read hundreds of startup stories and share one yourself at our 1000 Stories Plus project. Find out more at thestoryexchange.org.
Welcome back. We've been talking about the writer MFK Fisher,
who essentially created the genre of food memoir and who profoundly influenced the way that we write and think about food.
So something that jumps out to me about MFK Fisher, especially being a woman, is that she seems ahead of her time.
I think in many ways she was. She started publishing her work in the 1930s and 40s. She wasn't writing about housekeeping or how to cook a nutritious meal for your family. She was writing about the lived experience of eating and cooking and drinking.
My whole theory was and still is that she was a woman who married very young.
That's Anne Zimmerman again, Fisher's biographer.
She came from a fairly cloistered upbringing, as many women did in that time.
Fisher's mother was a homemaker. Her father worked in newspapers. She briefly attended Occidental College in Los Angeles, where she would meet her future husband, Al Fisher. They got married in 1929 when Fisher was just 21 years old, and they moved abroad a couple weeks later.
She went to France in 1929, which sounds fancy, but there really is no equivalent.
Yeah, France was still recovering from World War I. It was not the France that we know today. They moved to Dijon in eastern France, where Al was getting his PhD.
She didn't speak the language. Her husband was totally preoccupied with his job, which was to be a student at a university. She had no friends. She was totally alone. She could only communicate with her family by letters that took a very long time to get back and forth.
And it's in these letters that we really begin to see MFK Fisher's voice.
I was wondering if you could speak to how her practice of writing letters home when she first moved to France with Al maybe helped define or inform the style that she would become known for.
That's a great question. I'm not sure if anyone has ever actually asked me that question, and it's such a good one. So she was writing prolifically, very regularly, very prolifically, even though she was writing about how happy and perfect and she's so in love and she's having this like amazing time as a newlywed with her husband. That was sort of the first clue to me that maybe not everything was as depicted.
The tangerine story to me feels like something you would do in like the depths of quarantine where you're like losing it a little.
I don't think she had a very happy marriage. So I think the whole birth of her creative voice really came from loneliness and really came from feeling outside of where she was, but wanting to get inside and realizing that pleasure and walking and soaking up the sights and the sounds and the foods, and then sort of like trying to replicate those foods and those experiences on the page for the people that she was writing to at home was a way of easing her loneliness.
In her letters home to California, she wrote these vivid descriptions of the meals that she and Al were eating in France.
We ate terrines of pâté 10 years old under their tight crusts of mildewed fat. Then there were the snails, the best in the world, green and spitting in their delicate little coffins. There in Dijon, the cauliflowers were small and very succulent, grown in that ancient soil. Suddenly, I recognized my own possibilities as a person, and I was almost stunned by the knowledge that never again would I eat or drink as I had done for my first 20 years. At 1:43 p.m., September 25th, 1929, when I picked up a last delicious crust crumb from the table, smiled dazedly at my love, peered incredulously at a great cathedral on the horizon, and recognized myself as a newborn sentient being, ready at last to live.
The Fishers spent 3 years in France, but at the end of the day, the dream couldn't last forever.
Right. So they did come back to the United States. I mean, part of it was, like his time was kind of up at the university, but they were also out of money.
It was the Great Depression.
The tremendous crowds which you see gathered outside the stock exchange are due to the greatest crash in the history of the New York Stock Exchange in market prices.
Even with all of like the walking around and eating amazing meals and French pastries, et cetera, they were living pretty close to the bone, but they were kind of continually writing specifically to her family and saying like, could we get a little bit more money? And then that just kind of ran out.
Broke, the Fishers came home to America.
And they were living in the Laguna Beach area with her family, kind of hopping around a little bit as he was trying to get jobs as an adjunct that he hoped would turn into like a full professor job.
And MFK?
She was bored again. Trying to get pregnant, not having luck getting pregnant, and taking the bus into LA and sitting at the Los Angeles Public Library and starting to study the work of Brillat-Savarin, who was a famous French philosopher. And really, that in itself is sort of remarkable, just in its like esoteric, how do you spend your days?
But then a fateful meeting occurred.
She and Al became friends with another couple, Tim and Gigi Parrish. Tim was older. Gigi was a starlet.
And at some point, the friendship between MFK and Tim became romantic. They fell in love. They
ignited an affair that was truly life-changing, both because both of the marriages dissolved. MFK Fisher and Tim Parrish later married.
Tim was the love of her life.
Tim Parrish was the person that said to MFK Fisher, this writing is good and you could do something with it. We all know as writers that half the time what you need is somebody to kind of, A, just believe in you, but B, kind of give you the gentle nudge to say, like, maybe you could do this.
Yeah, absolutely. But he also represents this like moment where her career just really starts to flourish.
He fed her in ways that nobody else had, and I mean that in all the ways. Actual food, but then also intellectually. They went on road trips all over the United States. They went back to France. They had this little plot of land in Switzerland.
And MFK Fisher was very prolific during this time.
Serve It Forth came first, and then How to Cook a Wolf and Consider the Oyster, which is such a wonderful book.
We have a clip of MFK Fisher talking about her writing in the 1992 documentary Writer with a Bite.
What would I write about if I didn't write what I know? I'd be phony, and I don't like phony things.
But just as her career was really taking off, Tim, who was only in his 40s, was diagnosed with Buerger's disease, which is this horrible circulatory disease that causes excruciating pain.
How many years was it from Tim's kind of initial diagnosis until he passed?
It was relatively quickly. He became incredibly depressed. He started smoking and drinking. That affected his circulation, which then made him more prone to clots, more prone to blood problems.
It was this vicious cycle.
Yep. And then more depression, more need for painkillers. He would wake up screaming in pain. And in the journals, it would say things like, Tim screamed all night saying he wanted to end it all. I don't want to misquote, but I feel like I remember things saying like, he asked me to get the gun and I said I wouldn't get the gun. Like, it was always in play, the sort of drama/cinema of it. They were living like in a shack sort of on the way to Joshua Tree, Palm Springs areas. And I feel like they just went out there because it was just so intense and they just needed to be alone.
One morning, MFK Fisher awoke to the sound of a single gunshot ringing out across the desert. Tim had taken his life.
The older I get, sort of just realize how incredibly formative an experience like that would be for a person.
Here's MFK talking to journalist Bill Moyers about it in 1990.
Did you know he was going to take his life?
Oh, yes, sure.
Did you agree to it?
Yes, I did. It was always a shock, though. I kept him from killing himself once, and then I said, never again, never would do that to anybody.
After Tim's suicide, MFK, who was just 33 years old, descended into this really dark place.
She's in this funk, understatement of the world, deep depression, funk, grief, sadness, and she goes to Mexico with her siblings. And she writes very evocatively about a meal that she ate that she sort of says brought her back to her senses.
The bowl has beans in it. Large, light tan beans cooked with some tomato and onion and many herbs. The feeling of that hot, strong food going down into my stomach was one of the finest I have ever had.
It was the first thing she had really tasted since Tim died.
The first thing that fed me, in spite of my sensuous meals always.
As the waiter hovered nearby,
I ate everything and finished the beer. Then I paid him and thanked him more than he could know.
She was kind of like, okay, I have to keep going. I'm young, I'm divorced and widowed, but I'm young and I deserve to keep going. She got a job writing for Hollywood. I think she had a lot of love affairs. She ended up getting pregnant and having a child alone.
Didn't she tell her family she was doing top secret government work or something while she was pregnant?
She's like writing to her family and telling them like, sorry, I can't come for Thanksgiving because I have this top secret project. She's not a spy, but she was pregnant. And then she became a single mother. And this was like in 1946.
A difficult time for a woman.
A difficult time.
Always a difficult time for a woman.
Fisher would later marry again, have another daughter, divorce again. She lived a long life, one filled with many distinct periods. She knew real pain and real heartbreak, but she also remained curious about the world and engaged with it.
The reason I was drawn initially to biography and to memoir was because the way women tell their lives is so different than the way a man would typically tell his life. And if a man is writing a biography, it is very focused on things that happened in their job, who they met, decisions they made. Like, it's all very linear, not making gross generalizations, name droppy. But women's lives are messy and they're episodic, and there's reinvention and rebirth. And MFK Fisher is just like an onion with the layers. I mean, it's just like constantly sort of morphing and shifting.
Yeah.
As we close out this episode, I'm thinking again about how weirdly close we felt to MFK Fisher as we recreated that experiment with the tangerines in our office and all the sights and sounds of it.
So the little clacks of the radiator.
Yeah.
And hissing of the heat.
And I should mention that we are not in 1930s France. We're in 2025 New York City. So
this is one of the things I love about food history and recreating meals is that you begin to inhabit this sort of like shared metaphysical space with the person. And, you know, if you're lucky, someone from the past left behind words or music or art or, you know, something that gives you insight into their life. But it's like she's pulling up a chair.
Yeah. She would be, I think she'd approve of this.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And sitting down with us.
Yeah.
I know she loved gossip. I can kind of picture her like smiling and crossing her arms as she eats a piece and maybe, you know, asking kind of like a provocative question to get a little dirt on something that's going on.
Yeah, she'd probably want to know about her love life or something like that.
Thank you for spending time with us and MFK Fisher.
In the rest of this series, we will continue to look at some of the women who helped to define American food culture, particularly those you may not have heard of. Join us next week as we take a look at the life and legacy of Cecilia Chang.
She was a trailblazer. She did her own thing, not necessarily what people thought she should do.
This has been The Story Exchange.
Join us next time to hear more stories about innovative and inspirational women doing the things you'd never dream of. Or maybe you would. If you like this podcast, please share on social media or post a review wherever you listen. It helps other people find the show. And visit our website at thestoryexchange.org, where you'll find news, videos, and tips for entrepreneurial women. And we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a line at info@thestoryexchange.org. Or find us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Blue Sky. I'm Colleen DeBase, reporting by Victoria Flexner. Sound editing provided by Nusha Balyan. Production coordinator is Noelle Flago. Executive producers are Sue Williams and Victoria Wong. Our mixer is Pat Donahue. Recorded at Cutting Room Studios in New York City.